The Ahmaud Arbery murder case. Now, this is a malice murder, felony murder case coming out of Georgia. And for anybody who may not have heard about this case, I don't know where you live that you wouldn't have heard about this case because it's been everywhere. Winston, it is time for another Viva on the Street. Now, I have been told in the last few Viva on the Streets that the camera was not pointed at my face properly, and I was told that because it was true. So I'm going to focus on keeping the camera pointed a little higher up. I couldn't get a vlog out today because one of my kids' school is canceled for the remainder of 2021. So I'm going to be going somewhat crazy trying to remain productive, but such is life as a parent. Okay, and we're going to do a Ghislaine Maxwell update. The dog, whenever I start doing this, starts biting at my feet. Talk about victimizing the victim. Viva Frei, Montreal litigator turned YouTuber, and Nicholas Salmon, for those of you who don't know who he is back in the news. And if you don't know who Nicholas Salmon is,
I don't know what to tell you.
Nicholas Salmon, a.k.a. the Covington Catholic kid, a.k.a. the MAGA hat-wearing kid, a.k.a. the kid who was slandered and libeled by the media back in 2019 to the point where he had to sue the Washington Post, CNN, and 8 other media outlets for defamation.
That Nicholas Salmon.
Now, I have been vlogging on the Salmon defamation suit for over a year now. I've done, I suspect, at least a dozen videos tracking this lawsuit from the original claim to the motions to dismiss to the settlements and more. And while Nicholas Salmon has settled 2 of his defamation lawsuits, that being one against CNN and the other against the Washington Post, he still has multiple other defamation lawsuits against the mainstream media pending. But Nicholas Salmon is back in the news, and not because of his settlement with CNN or the Washington Post, not because of his defamation lawsuit, not even because he was a speaker at the Republican National Convention, but because of what is going on at the university that he was just admitted to, Transylvania University. Now, let me just preface this this vlog for full transparency. I think Nicholas Salmon was a victim, period, full stop. If you think that makes me biased, if you think that taints my interpretation of the circumstances, that is fine. You are entitled to your opinion. I don't think I'm biased. I think I'm just educated. I come to that conclusion after hours and hours and hours of research. When I look back on that now infamous picture, despite the reaction I had at the time, I don't see a smug with a smirk on his face. I see a young kid who just didn't know what to do. After having read the initial reports of what happened, after having seen how this kid got his name dragged through the mud, got slandered, got threats, had his life basically turned upside. Boy, it's cold. Look at this. Oh, maybe I got some counter protests here. Here we go. This is not the counter protest. These are. I believe you're called furries on the internet.
Your channel's amazing.
Thank you very much.
You're going around Quebec and say, hey, I don't wear a mask on the store. That's not cool. That's not cool.
These things have always made me scary. There's a person in there.
There ain't no drama with this llama.
All right, thank you. Is that City Hall?
Oh my God, I'm not.
Okay, awesome. Let's go see here. This looks like it might be the counter protest. This could be. Let's see if they're. Okay, looks like there might be a counter protest here. Am I gonna get hit by a car? No. Okay. So there looks like there's a flag that. Oh, okay. Hold on. People have banners. Let's see, people. Okay. There's a drone up there, and that's like a very fancy big drone. I don't know if you can see it. That's not a kitty drone. That's someone help me out. It's one of those. It's not the DJI Inspire. It's a real drone. That might have a camera on it. How you doing? So, honk if you can't get it up. I don't know what that means.
It's a joke about dysfunction, you know. That's fine.
But hold on, if they honk, which way is that joke going? Okay, so no joke. Jokes aside, this is part of the counter protest. If you have a mic and you want to explain what the nature of the counter protest is, do you want to do it?
I would just say that we're here for the 85% of people in this city who did their part to fight COVID. They did their part by social distancing, wearing masks, getting the vaccination. And when Ontario opened up, it's because of those people, not because of the people who stomped their feet.
What do you have to say to or about the people who don't think that they should be compelled to get vaccinated?
They have a choice.
Those truckers have a choice. What is that choice?
They could get the vaccine.
Okay.
Or they can just stay quarantined.
The quarantine whenever they become exposed.
No one is forced. They always have a choice.
Well, if your choice, okay, now serious question. If your choice is get the vax or be detained for however many days it is because you didn't, is that a choice or is that coercion?
That's a big reason why. So here's my take. I agree with you. We live in society. It gives us nice things. It could be community. It could be culture. It could be economic opportunity. The price we pay is our cooperation. You know, like we have to stop at red lights. Are you infringing on the freedoms? No.
Well, I think the rules. I would agree that stopping at a red light infringes on your freedom. But is there a distinction? Is there a line at which crossing that line for your freedoms is not acceptable? Like, where is the line where you have crossed over infringing on someone's freedom? Red light, fine. Seatbelt, fine. Forcing someone to
it's context specific.
Okay. Who decides then in any given specific context? And even a more scientific question is the quarantine period. What good if we now know that those who are vaccinated can and still do in fact carry the virus? What good does a quarantine on the unvaccinated do scientifically?
There's 19 unvaccinated people are 19 times more likely to end up in the hospital or ICU.
I won't agree with that, but even assuming I agree with that, that's on them, not on the vaccinated.
And we all pay for that critical infrastructure.
Okay, but then let me ask you this question. So are you a proponent then of telling heavy people to lose weight because they are more likely to go to the hospital and incur costs?
You know, I think there's definitely ways we can incentivize those kinds of behaviors. Like what about an alcohol and tobacco tax?
Yeah, well, that's on the product, but not on the healthcare service itself.
No, but the excise tax on that then goes to fund the critical public services.
Okay, arguably, but even still, that you're talking about a tax on the product as opposed to governing the behavior. So,
no, man, if this goes on,
We're now 2 weeks into the siege of the city of Ottawa. I call it a siege because that's what it is. It's an illegal occupation. This is no longer a protest. With a protest, you peacefully make your point and you go back home. And I know that the vast majority of the people did that. They came, they peacefully demonstrated, they made their point, and they left. And I want to say to those people, you've been heard loud and clear. Canada has heard you. My message to those still in Ottawa, to those at our border crossings, please go home. To those of you who have brought your children, please take them home. I urge you, it's time to leave. And it's time to do so peacefully. But to the very small groups who have chosen to take a different path, to those who have chosen to take a city of 1
Joining me now is CTV News public safety analyst and former OPP Commissioner Chris Lewis. Chris, thanks for joining us today. So the inquiry won't hear from Doug Ford directly, but that readout we just shared does offer some insight into the federal and provincial response. I wanted to ask you about the Prime Minister's assertion that the police shouldn't need more legal tools to clear the Ambassador Bridge blockade. Did the police have everything they needed at that time?
Well, they did. And in fact, they cleared that blockade without the Emergencies Act because it didn't come into effect until the day after they cleared it. And so what they needed in Windsor was a plan, and they had a plan put together. They needed enough resources. The OPP provided that and some other departments as well. And they executed the plan. And so, you know, the Commissioner of the OPP and many other people that were involved from a leadership perspective at the time all said we didn't need more legislation. It helped without a doubt, but we didn't need it. We had existing powers under existing laws. We just needed to get the people in place to do it. The good and the bad, and sometimes the ugly in terms of major incidents, big investigations, protests, etc. There's always that dialogue and the debriefing process among those involved. But in the case of watching what went down in Ottawa, which in fairness was way different and way more complex with 500 plus trucks in the downtown core, rather than what occurred in Windsor. Windsor wasn't easy either. It had its certain nuances that made it difficult, but it was done first. And then all those resources and many more went to Ottawa, of course, and subsequently reacted and did what was necessary in Ottawa. They didn't have enough resources at the front end, and frankly, they didn't have a good plan at the front end to try and stop that thing from becoming entrenched. So all the stars aligned. Once Windsor was done, Coutts Alberta was done. They got all the resources from the RCP and OPP in Ottawa. They had a proper plan that was developed by a joint team of the police leaders and experts in their field, and they executed the plan. That would have happened regardless of the Emergencies Act, but the Emergencies Act certainly helped in terms of towing and a few other details.
I want to ask you about that specific poll, and just a quick precision here. I wanted to make sure that people understand that it said 2 out of 3, or sort of 2/3 of Canadians believed that the Emergencies Act was necessary. What do you think about that public perception?
Well, the public perception is what it is. And the general public wouldn't understand why wasn't there enough police there to handle this in the front end. Well, that was an Ottawa police decision around trying to get enough resources in, what they needed based on their assessment that the protest wasn't going to be around for a few days, more than a few days. Well, we all know now that was never the intention, and they became deeply entrenched in the city. So when the resources all finally showed in Ottawa to deal with a proper plan, the general public assumes that came as a result of the Emergencies Act. The law came into effect, all of a sudden there's thousands of police officers there, and they fixed the situation. So they're confusing the two, and I don't blame them. It makes sense that they would think that way. But the reality is those officers were all on the way, should have been there weeks prior, but the planning wasn't done properly, and mistakes were made, and so be it. They always are. And I made many mistakes in operational leadership roles as well. So not to throw stones, but that's the reality. But the general person out there that wouldn't understand all those little nuances.
Former Ontario Provincial Police Commissioner and CTV.
A truckers' convoy rolls into the nation's capital.
One of the biggest stories that I've covered in my career.
The trucker protest reached its final destination, with anger toward reporters boiling.
You should be embarrassed to be a journalist!
At times, it was just absolute chaos. Absolute chaos.
How did it get to this? You know, why?
Can you imagine if you or I parked a vehicle?
Especially, they were that much more visible in the crowd.
You told lie after lie after lie.
I'd never seen that level of hate directed at us. I called it was hate wrapped in the Canadian flag.
The news is lying to people. You guys are lying. I do not understand. I do not understand how you as reporters and as new anchors can sit behind the desk and tell people lies.
So I think we tried to do that as best we could under these really challenging and difficult circumstances and situations.
This trucker family has been parked in Ottawa for 13 days with their 5-year-old.
There's not a parent down here that would jeopardize the safety or the health of their child. We brought them down here so that they can be proud of the moment.
There is more than one point of view. So we listened, we tried to reflect the both sides of the story and all sides of the story in our broadcast and online coverage.
On this Thursday night, the protests and disruption spread from Ottawa's airport targeted to border blockades at several key international crossings. Supply lines cut, auto plants closing, jobs are on the line, and the federal Tory leader changes her tune.
The economy you want to see reopen is hurting.
Also tonight, 30,000 Russian troops begin military drills in the Black Sea.
The biggest security crisis that
Ontario is bearing the brunt of disruptions from Ottawa to the border crossings, but one major political figure has been out of sight. Premier Ford issued a statement that the ongoing illegal occupation and blockade happening in Ontario must stop, adding that he's confident our police forces in Ontario, the Mounties, and border services will take the appropriate steps. Ontario's Liberal leader says Ford must do more than that.
Doug Ford's been in hiding. Weak statements, tweets that were likely written by other people. That's not leadership in the midst of a crisis.
Now it's time to let the people in Ottawa get back to their lives.
That was more than a week ago when Ford last took questions on camera about the protests. One reason for Ford's low profile, an election just months away, says this analyst.
He doesn't want to necessarily come out and embrace the various activities, but at the same time, he doesn't want to polarize anybody who's sympathetic to him.
Ontario.
Why isn't Ontario participating in the Emergencies Act inquiry? And are you leaving the door open to participating down the line?
Well, if they call me, I'll participate, but OPP will be acting there. And I just want to thank the OPP for the great job they did in Ottawa, the great job they're going to do in Canada Day. And I want to thank all the police agencies right across Ontario and the federal government, the RCMP, for the incredible job they did. Do you know what we can't rules to make sure we keep our borders open? And folks, typically may have vacation days to spend with their families. And this is a sacrifice our police officers do.
Inquiry. He lives there. He lives there. Into the federal government's use of the Federal Emergencies Act, not the Provincial Emergency Act. This is about the federal government. As much as a member wants to play function with the municipal police and the RCMP, in my opinion, they did an incredible job. But again, to the member from Ottawa, he knows it's a federal issue. He knows it's a federal inquiry, and that's up to the federal government, not up to the provincial government, up to the federal government.
At the bottom, the Prime Minister says, listen, yes, you can say the federal government will be there with more resources, but again, the thing that frustrates me, and everyone is conflated, and then there's some inaudible part, and then he says, but Doug Ford has been hiding from his responsibility on it for political reasons, as you highlighted, and important that we don't let them get away from that, and we intend to support you on that.
The occupation, I think there was a sense by some in the community, why is the Premier not here? But in fairness, sometimes when you bring a leader, felt that I think he was probably more comfortable not getting into the mix of this until they were able to come up with the number of officers that he could announce were supporting our officers.
But the Prime Minister here is saying that you're saying that it's for political reasons.
Well, we're all politicians, the three of us, and my sense is that he didn't
firmed up with the federal government to shame them. Ford didn't even make an effort to come and see what's going on. So it's clear you're sharing here the Prime Minister's frustration about the province.